Welcome back to First Take. Just under a year after tearing his right Achilles tendon at Madison Square Garden, Boston Celtics star Jayson Tatum will make his return to New York City tonight when he and the Celtics face the Knicks. A win will officially clinch the second seed in the East for the Celtics. Earlier this week, Tatum detailed how he's feeling about his return to MSG.
I thought about it.
Tough scene, Game 4 of the Eastern Conference semifinals last year, guys, where we saw Jayson Tatum go down. We were not sure about his timeline to return, yet less than a year later, Vince, he's back. How do you hear him in those comments ahead of tonight's game?
I think we look at Jayson Tatum and this miraculous return and think that everything has gone right as far as his rehab. For him to come back, not just this season, but to play as well as he's played, you would think that literally every one of the check marks has been crossed. And this is the final one, I think, to go back into the building, the place that it happened, where when he was getting wheeled off into the back hallway and you could see him and you could hear him crying, you could see the vulnerability in that moment, that lets you know that he thought his career was changed forever. Not just that playoff series, not just the Celtics bid to repeat, but his career trajectory had changed in that moment. And it probably still has to some degree. You don't know the full effects of an Achilles injury until years down the line. Players come back, but you also see that the atrophy years later. I think it's important for him. Usually you don't hear athletes be that vulnerable, be that revealing, be that open and naked emotionally. So I'm refreshed to hear that. I'm fascinated to see how he's received by the crowd tonight. But especially when you consider that this could be a second-round playoff series, this is a hurdle he's got to get over because he's going to have to go right back in there in the second round again in the same playoff series. So I think it's important for him to do this. He's not looking forward to it, but I think this is something that he will look at and say was critical for him to get past.
Which is why this scheduling is the worst possible thing that could happen to the Knicks right now. Because Jayson Tatum is going back to the scene of the crime, going back to the place that it was probably the lowest of his entire career. Because let's look at what happened before that injury. The Celtics had just blown 2 games at home that they should have won, and people were on his tail about it. They were about to go down 3-1 and looked like this was going to be one of the worst collapses that you can imagine from a defending champion. And people were looking at Jayson Tatum and judging his career and his greatness up until the moment where he has that injury. And now you go back to this scene and you get it out the way. This is going to be the most emotional game he's had since his return. He's come back to MSG. So now come playoff time, you don't have the accumulation of that return and the playoff game weighing on him in game 3 of round 2. This is out of the way. So he may have the jitters now early. He may have missed some shots early because of what he wants to do and what he wants to prove and what he's getting over. But come playoff time, that's out the way. And now you're going to get a Jayson Tatum weeks removed from that return who is going to be ready to rectify what happened last year. Oh, the Knicks better be ready for this round 2.
I don't know if it's going to be fully out the way. I think from a mental standpoint, it's something to get past as far as relative to the injury. But when there's no player, I think, that thinks about his story more than Jayson Tatum. And he thinks about going back there in the playoffs and being a better version of himself than he was last year. You can point to that series and saying, Jayson Tatum, before Game 4 of that, they were getting blown out in Game 4. They were down by 25. It was an MSG party in there. And we were looking at Jayson Tatum real funny in the light and saying, are you measuring up? If that part is in his head, then you wonder, is he going to go into a second-round series trying to rectify that and trying too hard? So I think it's a hurdle to pass, but I don't think that's the only hurdle as far as his performance against this team in that building.
Well, it may not be the only hurdle, but so far, since this injury, this is a reminder of Jayson Tatum's greatness that we discounted a year ago when he went down with the injury. Every step of the way, he has reminded us how great he is. All these stat accumulations for the beginning of his career, first youngest player to do this, quickest player to do all that. And people were kind of disregarding it with him. And despite this guy winning a championship, and it kind of all went away with how they played against the Knicks. Look at who he's been since he's returned. Come back, played way better than everybody thought, played a different way. The way this dude is rebounding and passing is better, a better version of Jayson Tatum than we've seen. So I fully believe that once this is out the way, he's going to come back to New York more measured because we have not seen those jitters any of that stuff impact Jayson Tatum yet since he's been back?
I think it's refreshing that he was willing to say he's not thrilled about going back there. I mean, you're going back to the scene where your career changed. But to come back to be averaging a double-double right now, 20 points, 10 assists, 10 rebounds, 5 assists a game. They're 13 in the games where he's in the lineup. They've won 13 of those 15 games. You're getting a great version of Jayson Tatum right now, which then leads into how the Boston Celtics shape up as a playoff team. They're the 2 seed. The Knicks are the 3 seed. So David, the gap between these two teams, because we know they're separated right now by 3 games. How sizable is that gap between where the Celtics are and the Knicks are, a potential second-round matchup?
So if you're a Knicks fan, this is good news, that I think the gap is smaller than it was last year at this time. Going into the playoffs last year, you remember the Celtics had beaten the doors off of the Knicks every time they played in the regular season. It was like 20-point margins every single game. Nobody gave that Knicks team a chance in that playoffs, and the Knicks still handled them with relative ease if you talk about the amount of games that they won. So the good news is the Celtics team and the Knicks team, the gap is not as big as it was last year, even though I do think that the Celtics are favorites, because you do have questions come playoff time with Tatum and how he's been playing. As much as I've been singing his praises, we don't know what it looks like for a dude to come back from this kind of injury to play playoff level basketball every 48 hours. We also have questions with some of that depth. Drew Holiday is not there. You have Porzingis wasn't playing, but he's not there anymore. You have some unknowns in that post area with those centers with Kata and those guys. You have Karl Anthony Towns now who can say, I could dominate those dudes. You have a Knicks team with some of those players I think that are a little bit more seasoned, a little bit better now. So the gap is a little bit closer, even though I think the Celtics are a better team.
You bring up a good point, because he has not played, Jayson Tatum that is, on the back end of back-to-backs. If we're getting towards the playoffs, going to start having to ramp up how more frequently he's playing, Vince.
Well, here's the thing. When you're in the second round of the playoffs, the first round is usually stretched out. You can play game 1 on Saturday. You won't play game 2 until that next Friday. Right? But in the second round, you're playing every other day. Game, day off. Game, travel. Like, I'm very curious to see how he handles the recovery from that, the second game of those games, the 4th game of those playoff series. But as far as the gap, the thing that's interesting to me, people, is we saw these 2 teams play in the second round last year. Neither one of these teams are the same. The Knicks look the same, different coach. The numbers say they're better, but it feels different, right? They're a better offensive team. They're deeper. Mike Brown has done all the things that we said that Mike Brown should do as far as the edict that was laid down when he took the job. Play deeper, play more, less dependency on the starters, diversify the offense. He's done all of that, and yet none of us feel good collectively about the New York Knicks. 7th in offensive efficiency, 3rd in defense, or 5th in defense, rather, and we still don't think of them as a collective unit because their highs are so high, their lows are so low, and you don't know which team, in theory, is going to show up. They're better, though, against better teams this year than they were last year. Last year, they got beat up by every good team, and then in the second round, it all came together. I think Karl Towns is going to be so critical in this series, and not just because of who you're going against, the Luke Kornets and Catas of the world, where you have a clear matchup advantage, but the Knicks are going to have to prioritize him. It cannot just be the Jalen Brunson show if these 2 teams match up again. I think they're going to match up again, but I think these are 2 totally different teams. I don't know how much we can look at last year and say that last year is a blueprint for this year, because so much is different. They look like the same Knicks and Celtics, but they are not.
But, all right, so David says he doesn't think the gap is that large. How do you see it?
I don't think the gap is that large either. I think the problem is you know what you're going to get from the Celtics on a night-to-night basis. The Knicks' high is so much, maybe higher than the Celtics, but their low is lower, and that's the problem. The gap isn't there, but the median is right at where it should be, a 3-game gap, so to speak, as far as performance.
And the biggest difference between these 2 teams, between last year and this year, is not with the rosters, not with the coaches, not with schemes. The pressure has flipped. Last year, the pressure was on the Boston Celtics to be the first team to repeat in 6-7 years, right? The pressure was on the Boston Celtics. People were saying you had an easy road to a championship. Everybody was hurt. Reprove yourselves as a championship team. And that pressure may have probably gotten to them, especially in that game 1 and game 2. And the Knicks were playing with house money because nobody expected them to win by the way that they were getting beat up by good teams. Now all of the pressure is on the New York Knicks.
They better get to the finals.
They better get to the finals. You fired your coach because you did not get to the finals.
No, they fired the coach because they wanted to.
That too. But they fired their coach in large part because they underperformed. And now you brought a new coach who was supposed to get you to the finals. And now you're playing a Celtics team that at the beginning of the season, we used a 2-word phrase to talk about this Celtics team: gap year. They were not supposed to be here, and the Knicks were supposed to be here. The pressure is on you in Madison Square Garden. It is game 3. You have to either come back against this Celtics team or prove yourself to be dominant against this Celtics team on your way to a finals that at the beginning of the season, everybody said there was no excuse for you not to be there.
Big one tonight over at Madison Square Garden, a potential second-round playoff preview. Very much looking forward to that and seeing how Jayson Tatum looks in his return to New York City.